Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. In today's video, I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of purchasing cheap guitar components as opposed to buying really expensive high-end components. This is a question that came up on one of the videos that I produced a while back, and a viewer wanted to know why I was using the tuners that I had chosen for that particular guitar build. The tuners I had chosen were Gato tuners. Now, over the years, I've sort of moved between using Gato tuners and Hipshot tuners. Typically on my more expensive builds, I would use the Hipshot tuners. But then for the cheaper budget builds that I do, I would use the Gato tuners. Now, Gato makes a lot of different kinds of tuners, and the ones that I was using is sort of their budget entry-level tuner. They're a very good quality, but they're very affordable. They're far less expensive than the Hipshot tuners. And I've always felt that most of you would perceive the Hipshot as being a higher-end, better quality tuner. Well, this viewer said I should be using Gato 510 tuners because they're much better quality. Well, yes, they are, and I have used them in the past myself, but they are significantly more expensive. And I have found that when I use really expensive components on some of my builds, it can be much more difficult to sell those guitars. So I got to thinking about that and decided I wanted to make a video where I would talk about the situations that might affect your decision as to whether or not to purchase the inexpensive budget parts or the more expensive high-end parts. And really what it comes down to, aside from money, which is really the overarching, overriding factor, it also has to do with the particular situation. What are you building this guitar for? It also can impact modifying existing guitars. So I'll try to explain that how it affects both in this video. But typically what I recommend, if you're building a guitar from scratch for yourself, your own guitar, I always recommend that you spend the money to buy the best quality components. Now, you may not have that money right away, so I would recommend that you start setting aside money and save it up until you can afford to purchase those high-end components. The reason for this is because when you factor in all the time that you're going to put into building your custom guitar, it's going to be significant. There's also an investment in the materials, the wood that you use. So I've always felt if you're going to invest a significant amount of your time and your energy into building this custom guitar, you owe it to yourself to use the best quality components. Now, you could, on the other hand, try to save a little bit of money by going more of the budget route, with the idea that eventually at some point in the future, you would replace those components, those budget components, with higher end components, thus bringing your custom guitar build up to the level that you're really dreaming of. But you've got to be really careful when you do that. If that's going to be your strategy, you need to do a lot of research before you do anything. What you'll find is, even though it would seem like the parts that we use to build guitars are standardized to a certain extent, they really aren't. And you may find that when it comes time to swap out that budget part with the more expensive higher end component, that there could be some fit and mounting issues. Holes might not line up. They might not be large enough. So you'll find yourself in a situation where you have to plug and re-drill holes, and that can be a real deal killer for a lot of people. So you need to do the research to make sure that you can make out that swap without having any issues. Or at the very least, be prepared for what issues you may have. It's important to be aware of the fact that, you know, even though you may have a cheap budget Tune-o-matic bridge, for example, and then you decide you want to upgrade to a higher quality one, the post holes don't always match up, even if they are described as matching up. You may have one company that says the center to center spacing between the mounting posts is, for example, 2 5/16 inches. So you find the higher end bridge and they have one that's the same dimension, that same center to center measurement. But then when you get the bridge and you try to install it, it's off by maybe a 32nd of an inch and it won't fit. And there's really nothing you can do except to remove those posts, plug the holes, drill new holes, reinstall the posts, and then install your new bridge. And unfortunately, you're going to be able to see that repair. So it's kind of a situation that can be very frustrating because it forces you to realize that despite the fact that they are supposed to be the same, they aren't always the same. It just depends on who's manufacturing it, where they're manufacturing it, and how close they are at trying to match the correct specifications. I've had so many guitar players tell me that they tried to swap out a guitar bridge and it wouldn't fit, even though it was advertised that it would fit. And that can be so frustrating. So you need to make sure that it's going to work before you do it. And oftentimes the only way you can make sure is to purchase it, try it to see if it'll work. And if it doesn't, hopefully you can return it to get your money back. So that's something else that you need to be concerned about when it comes to swapping out parts if you're trying to upgrade to better quality. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, I would encourage you to click the thumbs up button down below. Do it right now. It's a great way to show my channel support and it doesn't cost you anything. But if you'd like to take your support to the next level, you can visit my eGuitar Plans web store or my Highland Guitars merch store. There's links in the description below. And any purchase you make there is going to help support this channel so that I can keep making guitar building videos and sharing my knowledge and experience with you. You can also click the thanks button down below and leave a tip in the amount that you think is fair. But if you want to get the most out of my channel, I would encourage you to click the join button down below and consider becoming a member. As a member, you're going to have access to videos just like the one you're watching, but with a lot more information and detail, and best of all, no ads. Now let's get back to the video. If you're planning to build guitars and sell them to other people, there's a couple of scenarios that are going to dictate whether you should use expensive high-end components or budget-friendly components. If you're building the guitar for a customer who has commissioned you to build the guitar, there's a good chance they have specified the components that you're going to use in the guitar. If that's the case, what you would do before you start any build is you would gather up all the list of all the different components as well as the parts and materials. You would total up that cost, and that would be the deposit that your customer would pay you. And then once you have that deposit, you can then purchase all the parts and materials to build the guitar. Then once you finish the guitar and were ready to ship it, before you would ship it, you would charge the customer the balance, which is typically your labor costs. At which case, the guitar gets shipped off, your customer's happy, and you're happy. If, however, you're building guitars and then just selling them to anybody, maybe you've got a reverb store or a store on Etsy or eBay, you might want to consider building your guitars with budget-friendly components, because when you use the really high-end expensive components, you know, maybe you're trying to protect your reputation of building high-end guitars, you're going to find you have a much smaller audience who might be interested in purchasing your guitars. And it's very easy to build a guitar with high-end components and suddenly realize that in order to realize any sort of profit, you're going to have to charge, you know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for that guitar. And that's going to be a very hard sell, even if you have a good reputation for building high quality guitars. It can be difficult, especially in the economy that we are experiencing right now here in 2025, and with the prospect that things could get a lot worse. Because of that, a lot of the folks out there who would normally have some discretionary income to purchase a high-end guitar maybe tightening the budget strings a little bit because of the potential for rising costs of just about everything else that they have to buy. And for those who don't have a lot of discretionary income, it hurts even more. So I would recommend that you would at least consider building guitars using budget-friendly components with the idea, and this is something you could market, that a buyer could, if they want to, at some point later on when they have some discretionary income, upgrade the parts for more high-end components. Now, I've done this myself before, going all the way back to when I was first building guitars. I always was building budget-friendly models, and I would equip them with, Gato bridges, Gato tuners, and there's a bunch of other manufacturers out there that offer not only high-end components, but budget-friendly components as well that are very high quality. So I would always have the budget-friendly version of the guitars that I built, as well as the higher-end models. And the budget-friendly ones would always sell. As soon as I would finish building them and put them up for sale, they were gone because people could afford them. And I always try to encourage people, if you are a little bit put off by budget-friendly components, you can always swap them out for higher-end components. And I would try to build a guitar using components that could be easily swapped out. And on electric guitars, that's pretty easy. About the only component on an electric guitar that's a little bit more of a challenge to upgrade are the frets. Everything else can be swapped out. The tuners, the nut, the pickups, the electronics, even your strap locks, all of that can be swapped out for higher end, better quality components. And it can be done relatively easily. But offering guitars with budget-friendly prices and budget-friendly components, it's going to make them sell a lot quicker. And a lot of times, and this is the experience I had when I was building a lot of these budget-friendly guitars and selling them like on eBay and Reverb, is that people would buy them, but they'd never upgrade them. They'd play it for a while and realize, this guitar is perfectly fine. One thing I recommend that you definitely avoid doing is buying the really cheap components. You find these really cheap import components on eBay and Amazon that oftentimes have no brand name, or the brand name is sketchy and there are multiple identical components being sold by different sellers with different brand names, but you can tell they all came out of the same factory. You know what I'm talking about. I definitely recommend you stay away from those because oftentimes the quality of the components is so poor that it's going to affect your reputation as a guitar builder if you're building and selling to other people. Now, a couple of years ago, I bought a whole bunch of, it was a bulk sale of really cheap tuners. And I think the cost came out to $7 per set. So that's incredibly super cheap. And I thought this would be a great way to make a really budget-friendly guitar. And then people can swap out the tuners later on if they don't like them. Well, when those tuners arrived, I took them out of the boxes and I thought, there's no way I can use these. These are such junk that to equip a guitar with these would be a humiliating embarrassment to the brand that I've worked so hard to build. So I threw them away. It was a waste of money, a waste of time, but there was no way I could use those. And I've seen the same thing happen with really cheap pop metal bridges. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to try to go with a budget-friendly component, try to buy it from a reputable building or a reputable company that makes decent quality products. Preferably a range of products from budget all the way up to the really high end. And that's companies like Gato, Geiker, even Hipshot has some budget-friendly components as well as the really high-end stuff. So that's what I would recommend doing. Go with a name brand quality component, even if you're trying to save some money and purchase the budget components to keep the price of the guitars affordable. Okay, so I hope you found this video to be useful, and hopefully it will give you some food for thought about selecting components for the guitars that you plan to build or the guitars you plan to modify. At any rate, let me know what you think about this. Post your comments down below. And as always, if you did appreciate the video, at the very least, take a second to click the thumbs up button down below. It really helps the channel, and it has no effect on your experience on YouTube, other than the fact that YouTube will know that you like the video and is going to recommend other similar videos to you. So it's really beneficial to you as well as to me. And of course, if you want to help support this channel and take your support to the next level, you can do all the things that I mentioned earlier in the video. At any rate, until the next episode, as always, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for more of my guitar building videos.